Hello, everybody. Welcome. So today we're going to be talking about shutting down and withdrawing and stonewalling and what that's about and why that happens and what we can do about it, right? So you might be somebody who shuts down or withdraws or stonewalls, or you might be with somebody who tends to do that. I personally have done that a lot in my past. In fact, I've shared this with some of our past clients. I did not even know that I was stonewalling. Like, I didn't have a word for it. I didn't know that was even a thing. I just thought that I was rightfully indignant, you know? And so I used to, this is kind of embarrassing to say, but I used to go for days without talking to the person I was living with because I was upset. Okay, days, when I say not talking, like literally pretending that they're not there. Even if they ask me something, just sailing right past them, trying to make a point. Okay, I was quite the drama queen. And so I know how it feels internally when you are in that kind of shutdown mode. And in the years since, having learned about what's happening in my nervous system and what's happening in the relationship, and also having helped and worked with hundreds of clients at this point who've been on the other side of it, including speaking to people that were in relationship with me. Luckily, many of us are still friends. And speaking to them later on, I realized how damaging and overwhelming that is for the other person. So I've sort of seen both sides. I have not been in a relationship where somebody does that. I'm just realizing that now, for whatever it's worth. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I haven't had that dynamic. But I certainly have done it myself a lot, extreme. I also grew up in a home where my dad did that as his go-to. Right? He just did not know what emotions even were. He couldn't have described any emotion other than angry ever in his life, right? He might have said proud, but you had to hit it out of the park for him to even admit to a smidge of feeling proud for somebody. But anger is something that he could have named. And even that would need to be, it needs to be a peak for him to actually admit to that being an emotion. Otherwise, we just talked about thoughts and judgments instead of feelings, right? And I say this with love because my dad didn't know that he was stonewalling either. He had no idea either, right? But he would go for a month without talking to us. So I guess you try to lessen the load a little bit. Hopefully it ends with me in our intergenerational script. But what happens inside a withdrawing, stonewalling person? Well, number one, in terms of the attachment style, right? Because that helps us give a framework and a lens through which we can understand human beings and their behavior inside of intimate relationships. So to me, it's like switching on a light in a dark room, right? It suddenly makes sense. You can suddenly see things clearly. And so when you place that lens onto the person who stonewalls or shuts down, they're often either dismissive avoidance or fearful avoidance. Okay, let me explain what that means. So attachment style itself is the quality. It comes from the quality of the connection between you and a primary caregiver in the first 8 years or so of your life. It can also be influenced by teenage, but most of it is pretty set by the 8 to 10 years of your life. And it's the quality. And it's between you and your primary caregiver, who might have been your grandma, who might have been your dad, who might have been your mom, right? And it's not that two siblings with the same parent and the same home would have the same attachment style. No, because of two reasons. One, your temperament, which is your genetic predisposition of how your nervous system is wired, is different for each baby. And that makes up half of your attachment style. The rest comes from your unique interactions and experiences in your early childhood. So even if I had a twin sister or brother, we would have slightly different experiences with neighbors and cousins and friends and teachers and even our parents and grandparents, right? So the combination of our inherent temperament along with early childhood experiences together makes your attachment style. The dismissive avoidant is one kind of attachment style. It's an insecure attachment style. And 60% of the population is insecure. So we're in the majority, okay? So 40% approximately is securely attached. And that means that they know how to be flexible, they know how to have boundaries, they know what their needs are, they can meet their needs very clearly, they can ask for their needs to be met, they can see the humanity in another person, they can hold boundaries while also having a lot of empathy for the other person's position, right? And they also, very important, they accept the inherent impermanence of life and relationships. Okay, I say that because anxious attachment and avoidant attachment both are fighting against the inherent impermanence of relationships, right? Anxious attachment wants the attachment to make me feel better. But all relationships are impermanent at the end of the day. And that makes us very anxious. The dismissive avoidance don't want to talk about the relationship at all, because if we do, it makes the dismissive avoidant feel like something is wrong with them. And they can't withstand that, because if something is wrong with me, then this person is going to leave, then I'll never be lovable. Which again is fighting against the inherent impermanence of life itself. I find that securely attached people tend to grieve hard, but they're open to life. They're open to life being impermanent and having its gains and losses. They're open to that process. They're not so scared of it, right? So of the insecure attachments, there's the anxious, preoccupied, there's the dismissive avoidant, there's the fearful avoidant. Today, we're going to talk about the dismissive avoidant, because, no, sorry. The dismissive avoidant is the person who tends to shut down a lot. Okay, so let's talk about, in each attachment style, I find that there are 4 important components. Okay, number 1, each attachment style has certain core fears that they don't even know that they have. They're subconscious. And so when someone says or does something, it pokes on that core fear. We don't even know that it poked. We just feel uncomfortable and strange and sad and angry, and we react. The reaction that we have is called a protest behavior. It's because a core need is not being met. And we need a certain way of being reassured in relationships. Okay, repair needs to look a certain way depending on your attachment style. So these are the 4 components of any attachment style: core fears, protest behaviors, core needs, and repair. When you know that for each attachment style and how they interact with one another, you suddenly have a shorthand for being able to communicate, ask for your needs to be met, respond when somebody else is upset or worked up, right? So that shorthand is what I mean when I say it's like switching on the light. Are you saying that dismissive avoidant actually has underlying fear and anxiety that the relationship may end? Yes, but it is an indirect, that's not what they feel immediately. What they feel immediately is the fear that something is wrong with me, or I am trapped. I'm trapped in this, right? This person will keep hounding me and I'm trapped. I'm helpless, I'm trapped. Also, dismissive avoidance often will tell me things like, I don't think I can change. I feel stuck. I feel stuck in who I am. I don't think I can change. Okay. Another thing that I've seen in dismissive avoidance, and this isn't in every dismissive avoidant, but something that I've seen more often than not, is the tendency to be drawn to creature comforts. Okay. I've seen that with fearful avoidance as well. Fearful avoidance and dismissive avoidance, more drawn to creature comforts. Anxious, preoccupied, less drawn to creature comforts. Very interesting. So what happens for a dismissive avoidant? One of the biggest myths is that the dismissive avoidant actually has all these feelings bubbling inside, but they just don't know how to express them. But what I've seen is that they actually don't know often what they're feeling. They're not bubbling with emotion and trying to suppress it and just trying not to say it. They mostly feel blah. Okay. A lot of dismissive avoidance will say, how am I feeling? I mean, okay, I guess. Okay. Right. So they come across even-keeled. In non-intimate relationships, they will come across as even-keeled. So oftentimes, if an anxious preoccupied is with a dismissive avoidant person, the anxious preoccupied partner will say, my partner has such a good reputation. Everybody loves them. Everybody loves them. It's because they tend to be pretty even-keeled, because they're mostly like blah. Nothing excites them too much. Nothing depresses them too much. Nothing angers them that much. They just don't think about emotions at all that much. Okay. When they're not aware. Once they start the journey of healing, then they start actually pausing enough to connect with their emotions and see, what am I feeling? Is there a different word for it? But when they're not aware, usually they have a paucity of an emotional life. They don't have a very turbulent emotional life. Okay. So no emotional life much, combined with feeling overwhelmed by emotions in general, because they don't have any vocabulary for it, means that when someone else is very emotional with them, they will call that person too clingy or needy. Right? I've heard people say things like, why can't she, that's her problem. Why can't she deal with it? It's not my problem. Or why is he always like trying to get me to fix his moods? It's not my problem. Right? It is not. It's not our problem, but there is an interplay that dismissive avoidance often it just goes over their head. Right? So, one, don't know what I'm feeling inside, mostly feeling kind of blah. Not blah as in sad, but just not thinking much about emotions in general. Number two, if I had to think about emotions, it feels sort of overwhelming and I feel kind of stupid. Dismissive avoidance will often tell me I feel stupid when I talk about emotional stuff because my spouse forces me to talk about it. And I feel stupid because I don't know what to say. I'm not sure what's the right answer. I think she's looking for some sort of right answer and I don't know what I'm supposed to say. So they get overwhelmed in emotional conversations because they don't know what they're feeling. They can't quite decipher why all this emotion from you. And their core fear is something is wrong with me. I'm not good enough. I'm defective, or I'm trapped. And this dynamic pokes at that fear, right? Imagine if you didn't have any idea of nuance of emotions inside your own world, psyche. You had very simplistic, happy, mad, sad kind of categorization. And emotions make you feel stupid. You feel like you can't win. And when the other person starts complaining, you feel like you're never going to be good enough. There's something wrong with you and you are trapped. If you had all three of these experiences at the same time coursing through you, would you shut down? Of course. So shutdown is not something that they start off with. Shutdown is the response that they are having to manage this uncomfortable experience. Okay, it's actually a solution. It looks like a problem to the other person, but it's actually quite a sensible solution given what they're experiencing. Right? So they will often check out, right? They may stop making eye contact. They may look away. They may be on their phones a lot. They may, because they can't often, they're struggling to name their feelings and modulate their feelings, creature comforts becomes a way for them to modulate their feelings. Right? And they often quickly feel trapped between I want to be in a relationship, but I feel like I have to lose who I am to be in a relationship. I feel trapped. This person is going to swallow me. There's no room for me. So they take all of this, and since none of it makes sense to them and it just feels like a cloud of overwhelm, they just shut down and they wait for the cloud to pass. Sorry about my cough. I actually sound worse than I feel. I feel fine. So they shut down as a way to manage these confusing, conflicting thoughts and feelings and a sense of helplessness and feeling trapped. So they will check out in small ways, staying later at work, watching TV shows separately, being on their phones, not making eye contact, spending more time with their friends, right? And if all breaks down and none of these work, when they're trapped, they will completely just like sort of like wait it out, or they will burst and call the other person irrational or needy. Irrational is a big one. They will often say, it doesn't make sense. It's not even logical. What he's saying doesn't make sense. What she's saying is not logical. Because they think in logic. So they're trying to make sense of it, but it doesn't quite fit. So they're left with either you're irrational or something is wrong with me. And both are very uncomfortable feelings, right? One of the other things I've seen in Dismas avoidance is they will end up having sudden, harsh boundaries because they don't know how to be nuanced in their feelings, emotions, needs, and vocabulary. So instead of working through things, they will sort of ignore and bury their head in the sand. And then when they can't take it anymore, it will feel to the other person like a sudden boundary. So again, we could talk about this for 4 hours, but I want to transition to what are some ways, if you are a Dismas avoidant or tend to shut down, or if somebody you know and love or care about tends to do that, what might be some exit ramps out of this cycle of pain and confusion? For yourself, the number one thing is to get clear on what your needs are and speak up about them. Because you tend to not have much contact with your own emotions and needs, you only tend to react when the other person is being very loud and insistent on their emotions and needs. So it's always a reactionary stance, right? The Dismas avoidance stance is a reactionary stance. You have nothing to say, nothing to complain, nothing to ask, nothing to, until the other person pushes you. Your growth edge is pausing enough to ask yourself, what do I want? Not, am I meeting this person's needs? Oh no, she's going to be mad. He's going to be mad. Did I do this? Did I do that? Oh my gosh, it's never ending. But am I happy in this? What do I want in this? How is this working for me? What are my needs? Which will shift the dance a little bit, especially if you're with the anxious preoccupied. The whole dance has become sort of repetitive, where only the anxious preoccupied has needs, and the Dismas avoidant is just trying to meet them and often fails. That's often the whole dance, right? So you can shift the dance a little bit and steady it more by speaking up about your needs. And the important thing here is to ask for what you do want, not, I wish you would stop doing this, and I wish you'd stop doing that, and I wish you would not do this, and I wish you would, and that time when you did this was not cool. That's not helpful. I need X. For example, it would look like if that person was meeting your need, what would that give them an example so they know how to succeed with you? And a ninja move is to actually tell them of a time that they did already succeed with you. For example, honey, remember 2 months ago, I don't know if you remember, we were on vacation, we were at this beach house, and I remember I had a headache and we were with friends, but you came back from the beach and checked on me and gave me, and that meant a lot. An example of when they did succeed is much more likely to inspire the other person than 10 examples of when they did not succeed. So if you are the shutdown kind of person, when you feel hurt, when you feel criticized, if you tend to pull away, shut down, and withdraw, your most important pivot is learning how to pinpoint your needs and speak up about them, instead of just constantly trying to just sort of balance the boat and make sure the other person doesn't get too mad. Okay. And there's lots of specific ways to do this. But I want you to just get the idea that that's the pivot. The pivot is not some magic way that you're going to appease your partner and make everything perfect. The pivot is actually quite the opposite. Yes, meet their needs, but also speak up about yours. That's what's missing. Okay. If you are with somebody who tends to shut down, withdraw, and it looks like they're pouting, or it looks like they don't care. But actually, remember, they are sort of either in freeze response because everything feels like a cloud of confusion and they don't know how to navigate it. And they've decided that there's no use in trying. I'm trapped. I'm helpless. Nothing I ever do is ever going to improve anything. So I'm just going to wait it out. That's where they are. Okay. If you're with somebody who tends to do that, first, they may be a dismissive avoidant or a fearful avoidant. Because remember, a fearful avoidant, half of their attachment style is the avoidant, right? So the fearful avoidant also can have periods where they're withdrawn and shut down and stonewalling. So can the dismissive avoidant. Okay. And I'd be here till morning if I was to tell you all the different ways that can show up. But I just want you to know that if you're with somebody who tends to do that, you need to find out first if they're a fearful avoidant or a dismissive avoidant, because it's a different approach. But for now, let's say that they're the dismissive avoidant. The number one thing you can do, and there's actually about 6 or 7 things that you could try as exit ramps, because different people respond to different things, but it's not an infinite amount. There's just a few things. And within those, you will hit on the thing that unlocks that dance. But one of the common ways that you can unlock it is to, if you're bringing up a complaint, start the complaint with, how do I say this? sharing what they bring to your life, what they add to your life in a genuine way. If you need to bring up a complaint, start with sharing what the other person adds to your life. If, on the other hand, they're already in shutdown and they're already like withdrawn, then the best single pivot is to use touch and acceptance. Touch and acceptance. What does that look like? Acceptance does not mean, maybe you have your child's birthday party, but your spouse refuses to come to the birthday party because they're shut down and withdrawn, and you're just going to accept that. That's not what it means. Acceptance means that you accept. Sometimes that might mean that they need to think about it for a couple of days. And there's benefits to that way of operating in the world as well. So you accept that they have a different nervous system than you, and that they need different things than you. Okay. And you convey that acceptance to them. So if you are already in the middle of a situation where the other person is withdrawn, shut down, use touch. Just as you're passing by, just rubbing their back, right? Giving a hand squeeze when you say bye in the morning. Really non-intrusive, not demanding kind of, you have to hug me now, not that kind of touch, but sort of soothing indicators that you're on their side and things are okay, it will be okay, we'll figure it out. That's the message you're trying to convey. It's an affectionate touch, like you would for your son or daughter as they were running around the house. Touch and acceptance that they need more time to process and they have a different nervous system, and that's okay. Letting them know that, not just thinking it, but actually saying to them, hey, honey, I know it sounds like, it looks like to me that you're a little overwhelmed or upset. If you need to talk about it, I'm here to listen, but you don't have to. If you need time to just be with it, that's okay too. I always say that when there is understanding, there is no anger or judgment. You might still choose not to be in a relationship with that person, but it's not from judgment. It's from, oh, our nervous systems are wired too differently. You might choose, but you get away from, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm doing this right, and you're terrible, right? You come away from that sort of black and white thinking, and you see people in their humanity with different shades of their nervous system. Wonderful. Okay. So guys, inside HYR, we are really going deep into this. We're actually now, I'm adding a module where we'll be using these attachment styles to help you resolve at least 2 out of 3 recurrent repetitive arguments. We all have those recurrent repetitive arguments, right? It's usually money, sex, parenting, extended relatives, affection and quality time together. And what is the last one? I'm blanking on the last one. I'm totally blanking on the last one. There's 6 chores, household chores. these 6, in different ways, every relationship that is struggling tends to have 2 or 3 of a combo of these. So maybe in yours, it's extended relatives, money, and parenting differences. In somebody else's, it'll be a different 2 or 3. And in HYR, we will help you figure out what your 2 or 3 is, and then show you how to use attachment style combos to be able to get resolution on those stuck issues. Sometimes we've been stuck with those things for decades, right? So if you've never been in HYR and you'd like to learn more about it, you can comment HYR and someone from my team will reach out and tell you more about it. All right. I love you guys. Thank you for sticking with me, and go and start looking at interactions through this lens. You'll quickly start becoming sort of the emotional leader. You'll be able to see patterns happening, sort of see the forest instead of the trees. So start practicing that in your lives. All right. Have a great rest of the night. Mwah!